Hey guys, so finally I was able to create our first video for the Cybersecurity Club, and as I mentioned before, this first video is an introduction to virtualization, and that is because you guys will need to create virtual machines in order to not only learn, follow up what I'm showing you guys or what you're studying, but also because you need to practice a lot of the stuff that we are going to do. So in order to do that, the best way, the best solution is to create virtual machines. Create a virtual environment and create virtual machines. So before we actually learn how to use the Linux operating system, the Windows operating system as a server, and also how to configure a different number of services and also implement security, apply security to those services, we first need to be able to create the environment in order to achieve such goal. So that's the idea here, okay? So again, the goal is to introduce you to the concepts of virtualization, at least the most basic concepts of virtualization, and also show you how you can create that virtual environment in your own machine. Okay. Now, also, you must keep in mind that it is required that each of you guys have your own computer, whether it's a laptop or a desktop computer, it doesn't matter, but you do need a computer that you can use to work and create this virtual environment. Okay? So, well, first of all, let's start with the idea of virtualization, right? So, a virtual machine, also called the guest operating system, is installed within a host machine, which is also called as a host operating system. So the goal here is to allow you to use your physical host, your physical machine, let's say your laptop, and on top of your laptop, you want to create other machines. That is because, well, so imagine a situation where you need a plural number of machines. You need 3, 4 computers, for example. Obviously, you don't have so many computers available. Even if you do, you're not going to carry all those 4 laptops around, right? But you do want to be able to, at any moment in time, access those 4 computers. So again, the idea is to create a virtual environment, okay? And you can just spin up that virtual environment at any moment that you want, as long as you have access to the host machine. So the idea, as you can see here at this image, you have your physical machine, which is also called the host operating system, and then you're going to use a virtualization software, a virtualization tool, to create these so-called virtual machines or guest operating systems. Okay? So the operating system running in the virtual machine, this one and this one, right, is kept isolated from the host operating system. So what you can see here is that whatever is running in here, the operating system and its applications, and for example, a different operating system that is running here, right, with other tools, they're working as if they were 2 separate physical machines. They're just not physical, they're virtual. Okay, so the virtual machine is basically a software implementation of a computer with interface identical to the bare metal hardware. Okay, so it has everything: devices, interrupts, memory, page tables. So again, it's like making a copy of your physical machine. Okay, it's just not physical. Well, but those virtual machines, they are running as software instances, right? Well, if they are software instances, softwares must be executed on a hardware and on top of an operating system or firmware, right? That's why your machine, your physical machine, will act as what is called the hypervisor. So the hypervisor is the virtual machine monitor, right? It creates and runs virtual machines. It manages the execution of those guest operating systems. Remember, the guest operating systems are the operating systems running on top of the virtual machine. It subdivides the hardware resources. Now, this is really important because observe, what you have here is your physical hardware, right? Such as your laptop. And on top of your laptop, you have your operating system, your host operating system, which most likely it is the Windows operating system or Mac OS X in case you're using a Mac product, right? Now, if on top of this operating system, you're going to have the hypervisor, which is the software that allows you to create those virtual machines and manage those virtual machines. But these virtual machines are pretending to be real machines, right? They're just not real, they're virtual. Well, but if they are acting as if they were real machines, right? Where do their hardware come from, their hardware components? Because again, each virtual machine will have access to the network interface card, will have its own processing unit, its own CPU. It will have main memory, right, allocated to it. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from the physical hardware that you have. So what you need to understand here is that the physical hardware that your laptop, for example, has is going to be shared with those virtual machines. So the reason why it is important to understand that, well, actually there is a number of reasons, but most importantly, for our cybersecurity activities, what we need to understand is that these virtual machines, they are limited to the hardware that you have available. Most importantly, limited to the amount of main memory or RAM memory that you have available, right? So let's say that your laptop has 8 gig of RAM. Well, you have to understand that you have 8 gig, but the operating system such as Windows that you have will consume a good portion of it. Let's say 1 gig, and I'm just guessing, okay? I have no idea. But let's just say that it's using 1 gig. Okay, you have about 7 gig left. Well, you also have some other applications being executed, right? You also have the hypervisor itself. So let's say that out of those 8 gig, you have at the end, you have about 6 gig remaining, 6 gig left to share across those virtual machines. Well, so if you want to create virtual machines with 2 gig of RAM each virtual machine, and you need to execute all those virtual machines at the same time. You want to run all those virtual machine instances at the same time. Again, if you have 6 gig left, you're running them simultaneously, 2 gig each one, you'll be able to run up to 3 virtual machines simultaneously. Okay? Now, observe that I'm saying simultaneously. If you want to, if you're not going to run 3 virtual machines at the same time, you're just going to run one, then you can have X number of virtual machines using 6 gig each one. Because again, what matters is the number of virtual machine instances that is under execution. When a virtual machine is not under execution, it's not consuming your hardware. Now, you also need to understand that there are basically or mainly two different types of hypervisors, right? And remember that the hypervisor is the framework or firmware or software that controls that virtualization, right? So there are two main types, okay? They're called type 1 hypervisors and type 2 hypervisors. Well, when it comes to virtualizing a production, deploying virtualization in a production environment, you want to deploy, you want to implement virtualization type 1, hypervisor 1, okay? Why? Because you get, well, again, a number of reasons, but most importantly, because you have more, you can increase the performance of the guest operating systems, the virtual machines that are running on top of the hypervisor. And the reason is because observe that there isn't the host OS layer here. So in this type of situation, for example, when you're running, this is a hypervisor tool, okay? VMware ESX, what happens is the VMware ESX is going to, when you power the machine on, it will load VMware ESX. So the hypervisor is directly running on top of your physical hardware. It's not an application that you need to first boot your machine using your operating system such as Windows, and then when you log into Windows, you have to double-click, execute the hypervisor application. No, you don't have the operating system here in the middle, okay? Now, what you guys probably saw already, and this is what you guys are going to use, is the type 2 hypervisor. So there is a number of tools, okay, of hypervisor tools here. The one that I would recommend if you are either a Windows user or if you are a Linux user or if you are a Mac OS X user, but not Mac with the M1 or M2 chips, then I recommend using VirtualBox, which is not listed here, but that's the one that I would recommend. Obviously, you have these other types here, right? Such as Virtual PC, VMware Workstation. You also have VMware Fusion, VMware Player. Okay, so a few different options here, but I would recommend VirtualBox for one very simple reason. Although VirtualBox is compared to these options here, it's probably the one with least resources, but it's so much easier to use compared to these ones. Okay, so again, the difference here is that you have your laptop hardware, right? You have your operating system such as Windows, and in your Windows, you're going to install VirtualBox, right? Which is your hypervisor, and then you're going to use VirtualBox to manage the virtual machines that you want to create. So again, a few examples here of a type 2 hypervisor. You have VMware, VirtualBox, Parallels, Xen, Hyper-V, QEMU. Now, as far as I mentioned that I would recommend you to use VirtualBox if you are a Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X user. If you are if your Mac does not use the M1 or M2 chips. Now, if you do have a MacBook, for example, with the M1 chip or the M2 chip, you have to use UTM or Parallels, okay? Now, I actually have I actually use, my laptop is a MacBook, so, and it's a M1 chip, so I cannot use VirtualBox. Now, how can I show you how to use VirtualBox or to do what we need to be done? I am going to send you guys a link to a YouTube video that precisely shows step by step well, it doesn't show the process, the installation process of VirtualBox itself, also because it's not needed, because you just need to download. So you Google download VirtualBox, you download VirtualBox, it's free, download it, double click it, and the installation process is just like any other software. Next, 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 complete, okay? But you do need to see how you can create virtual machines. How you can create that virtual environment and the virtual machines. And once you've created the virtual machines, how you can install the operating system in those virtual machines. So I'm going to post a link showing you step by step how to do that. If you use a MacBook with the M1 or M2 chip, I will also show in this video, okay, how you can use UTM, or formerly known as parallels, to do so. Okay. Here you have a description of the of some of those solutions. So I'll just go through it very quickly. First of all, in general, VMware is not a free solution, okay? However, you can download a free copy of VMware Workstation, which will allow you to create virtual machines, and then you can also use Workstation Player to run the virtual machines that you created using VMware Workstation. Now, if you are a macOS user, again, since your Mac product does not have the M1 or M2 chip, you can also use VMware Fusion. Okay? Now, as I mentioned, I strongly recommend you to use VirtualBox because it's free. This is the link that you need in order to download it, right? There is a number of features. Again, it's not as powerful as VMware Workstation, for example, but it has more than enough resources in regard to what we want to do. Okay? Okay, now, again, I am going to post a link to a YouTube video showing you step by step how to create a virtual machine in VirtualBox. That's one. Once that virtual machine has been created, I want you guys to install the Linux CentOS distribution. Okay? The Linux CentOS distribution. So the video will also show you how to download the proper file and how to then install the Linux CentOS operating system in the virtual machine that you have created using VirtualBox. So basically, this video will show you step by step all the process from creating a virtual machine and installing the CentOS Linux operating system. And that is what we will need for our next video or our next class. Okay? Now, once you've done, so the first thing that I want you to do, so when you watch this video, you get to this slide here, okay? You get to this exact point in our video. I want you to stop, pause this video, and then you go watch the video that I am going to send to you guys, the one that explains how to install CentOS Linux in your VirtualBox virtual machine. Only once you've done it, you're going to go back here and continue from here. Okay? Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because you need to have that virtual machine created in order to configure your virtual networking setting for that virtual machine that you have just created. Okay? So once you have created your virtual machine and the Linux operating system has been installed, okay, you're going to see, and again, the video will show you, you're going to see in VirtualBox all the virtual machines that you have created. You're going to click on that virtual machine instance, and you're going to open its settings. So you're going to open the virtual machine settings. And this is what you're going to see. Okay? A window, a pop-up window with two tabs. Hardware, well, it depends on the version of your VirtualBox. Okay? You may have more tabs here, but you will for sure see the hardware tab, and that's what matters. Because this is where you need to go in order to configure your virtual machine networking setting. Okay, this is where you need to go. And the reason is there is a different number of network configurations that you can apply to your virtual machine. Okay, you may disconnect that virtual machine from any type of communication. So basically, it will be a standalone operating system. Okay, it does not establish any communication, any network communication. You may configure it as host only, which means that it will have a network configuration, but only between the virtual machine that you created and the host operating system. Okay, your host operating system, such as your Windows. You may also configure an internal network. That means that if you create, let's say, 3 virtual machines, only those 3 virtual machines that are being managed by your hypervisor, by your VirtualBox, will be able to communicate. That is not what we want. So again, none of these options is the network setting that we want. Okay? So what I need you to do is, when you go here to your virtual machine settings and you click here on network adapter, I need you to click to select this option, bridged, connected directly to the physical network. This is what I need you to do. So for each virtual machine that you create, once the virtual machine has been created and the operating system has been installed, I need you to go back here to the virtual machine settings, click on network adapter, and change it to bridged. Okay? I could be wrong, but I believe that the default option is net. You're going to click here. Just make sure that you do that. Okay? That is the network setting that we need. Okay? So that is what you need in order to install and run VirtualBox, and then once you get VirtualBox running, create a virtual machine and install the operating system in that virtual machine, and also configure that virtual machine's networking setting. Okay? Again, make sure that here's what I need you to do. I need you to install VirtualBox, following the video that I'm going to post, using the URL for the video that I want you guys to watch. So install VirtualBox, download and install VirtualBox. That's one. Then create a virtual machine in VirtualBox. In that virtual machine, you're going to install the Linux CentOS operating system. Just follow the video that I'm going to share with you guys. Once that virtual machine running Linux CentOS is done, you need to go back to this virtual machine settings and change the network adapter configuration from NAT to bridged. You click OK, and you're good to go. Okay? Now, if you are a Windows user or a Linux user or macOS user that does not have the M1 or M2 chip, you can stop the video here and then go watch the other video. Oh, I'm sorry. At this point, you have already watched the other video. So you can stop this video right now, because at this point you have VirtualBox installed, running the CentOS virtual machine with the network configured. That's what you need. If you are a macOS user that has the M1 or M2 chip, I am now going to show you how to use UTM to do that, okay? Which is install UTM, download CentOS Linux system, create a virtual machine, and then install the CentOS operating system in that virtual machine. Okay? So, let me go there. And this is the video that I am going to share with you guys, those ones that are going to use VirtualBox. Again, I'm going to post this URL for you guys. Okay, so first of all, if you are a macOS user with M1, M2 chip, this is the software that you need to install. Okay? So you can basically search for download UTM Mac. Download UTM Mac. The first hit that you get will take you to the download page where you can download UTM, install it, just like any other software that you would install in your macOS system. Once you have it installed, here comes the next steps. I thought that I had the file here, but I don't anymore. Okay. So, here's what you are going to do. CentOS, right? Download page. You're going to click here. Observe that by default, you're going to see CentOS Linux version 7. That's not what we want. We want to go here, click here on CentOS Stream. By default, the current standard version is 9. If you prefer to use 8, that is perfectly fine, okay? But you can download CentOS Stream version 9. Now, if you are a macOS user with the M1/M2 chip, you're not going to download the x86-64 version. You're going to download ARM64. So this is what you need to download. Now, observe that this is a big file, right? It's a big file, so it has about 7.5 gig. It should take you some time to get this download done. Okay? Okay, meanwhile, let's see how we can actually create a virtual machine before we install the operating system in that virtual machine. So I have my UTM software open here. Observe that I already have 2 instances, okay? You won't see anything here, okay? This window will be blank. That is perfectly fine. Observe that you have this plus, right, icon here. So I'm going to click there, okay? You have 2 options, virtualize or emulate. We're not going to emulate. We're going to virtualize, right? So it will ask you what type of operating system are you willing to virtualize. Well, the virtual machine that I am going to create is going to run Linux. Now, really important here, it is not asking you what is your host operating system, which would be macOS. But that is not the case. It's asking the operating system that you want to virtualize, and it's a Linux operating system. Okay? Now, here, you are not going to, well, if ideally you want to conclude this download first, you want to finalize downloading the CentOS image file first, because then you would just come here, right? Click here on Browse, because it's asking for the boot ISO image, which is the file that you use to install the operating system. So you'd click here on Browse, go to Downloads, and you'd see it here. Well, I cannot see it here because the download is not done yet. Okay, although we're almost there. Okay, but I'll go back. So you click there, you select the ISO file, and then you continue. Oh, I'm sorry. So let me just wait for this to conclude here. I do need to inform that that file, unless I want to determine something different. But since it's almost done, I'll just wait just a couple more seconds, and it's done. Okay, so now I come here and I select my CentOS Stream 9 latest ARC64 DVD1.iso. So I click on Open, I continue, and then you want to determine how much RAM you want to assign to this virtual machine. Okay, I believe that my laptop has 8 gig of RAM or 6, I can't remember, whatever it is. I'm assigning 4 gig to it. You do not need to determine 4 gig. If you want to, use 2 gig. Okay? Well, if your machine only has 2 gig, well, then I would recommend you to try to get access to a different machine, because 2 gig of RAM is not enough to do what we want to do. Okay? So, okay, let's say that you have 4 gig of RAM, you can assign 2 gig to this virtual machine here. You can also configure, although you do not need to, you can also determine how many CPU cores this virtual machine will have available for it. Okay? Again, no need to determine that, so I'm just going to continue. What about storage? The virtual hard drive, right? How much storage? What is going to be the capacity of your virtual hard drive, the virtual hard drive that you are assigning to this virtual machine? I'm going to do, let's say, 30 gig. Now, you may think that, well, 30 gig is a lot, but observe that it will not create a file, a 30 gig file, when you create this virtual machine. Okay? This file will only have the size that is required to run the virtual machine. And as you're using the virtual machine and you're installing softwares in it, you're creating files in there, as it needs more space, it will continue to increase the size of the file until it reaches 30 gig. So again, this is not the size of the file, but it's the maximum size assigned to the hard drive, to the virtual machine's hard drive. Okay, I continue. I don't need to worry about this. I continue. Okay, I want to name my virtual machine, and I'm going to name it CentOS. Okay, and I click on Save. Now, once I got here, I can see that the virtual machine is there. It's being created, and now I want to run it. I'm going to click on the Play button over here. There it is. I want to install CentOS Stream 9. I'm going to click there. And it's loading, it's booting the the installation tool. Okay, it can take maybe even up to a minute. It shouldn't take more than that. Okay, but it should take a few seconds to get it going. There it is. Okay, so how does the installation process works? Well, it's again very, very straightforward. There is just one or two catches, and I'm going to make some comments on that. First of all, what is the language? Okay, English. What is the keyboard map? English, United States. I click continue. Okay, so keyboard, it's set, the language is set, time is set, installation source is set, the type of installation, server with a GUI. It's not important to focus on that right now. Okay, you just don't bother. Now, okay, three things here that you need to determine. As you can see, it's in red, right? That's because you need to define those. The first one is, as far as your system, where is this CentOS system going to be installed? So the installation destination, I'm going to click there. And remember that I created a hard drive, a virtual hard drive of 30 gig. So that is the hard drive that I want to use. Okay, so double click it, make sure that you see this check icon over here, and then you go here and click on done. Okay, so installation destination, done. Root password. So the Linux operating system requires you to use two different types of, or to create two different types of user. One is the regular user, or the regular user account, that you can do it by simply clicking here on user creation, full name if you want to inform the full name, okay, and the username. The username is going to be, in my case, I'm going to create Diogo, okay. Password. Do you want to define a password for this user? I'm going to define it as Diogo as well. Well, if the password is too short or too simple, it is going to show you this message down here. That is perfectly fine. It's just a warning, okay? I can basically say, okay, I know, I'm aware of it, and I want to keep that password, okay? Done. Now, the administrator user in the Linux system is called root user, and you need to define a password for your root user. So I'm going to click there, and I'm going to set the root's password, which is root as well. Again, just a warning, I click here twice, and it's the pre-setup is all done. Now I can go ahead and click on begin installation. Okay. Now, obviously, this is a process that should not take long. Okay. I believe that it will hardly take 5 minutes. Hardly. Obviously, this can vary depending on your hardware setting. Okay. Depending on how powerful your laptop or desktop computer is. But again, it should not take long. Okay. Then, once it's done, it will display a message. And I'm going to cut the video here. Okay, I'm going to exclude this part here and wait until the end of the installation progress. Once it's done, I'll be back. Okay, so the installation is done. And I am now going to click here on Reboot System. Now, when you do that, it's really important that you power this machine off. Okay? So I'm going to power it off. And the reason why I'm doing that is because, so I closed it. If I now go back here, I can see that CentOS is here, right, as it was before. But if I scroll down here, you're going to see that it is still configured to boot the system using the ISO file, right? Which means that it would just try to to go back to the installation process once again. That's not what I want. So I'm going to go here. I click on this down arrow here, and I select clear. See, empty. Now I can once again launch this virtual machine. And after a few seconds, you should see your CentOS Linux system installed, up, and running. There it is. Okay. Now, just one thing that I forgot to show is before, so I'm going to shut it down once again. So once the installation process is done, you shut down the virtual machine, you go here and you clear the ISO image that was supposed to boot, right? So I clear, it shows empty. Another thing that I want to do before launching this virtual machine again, is I want to go here, okay, and click here on the on edit selected VM. Oh, I believe that I paused it, so I can't actually edit. Yes, that is right. So I'm going to stop this virtual machine, right click, stop, and now I can edit. The reason why I want to do this is because you guys need to go here to the network configuration, and the network mode is set to shared. I want to change it to bridged. Okay, you just change it to bridged. I would recommend that it's not necessary, just to avoid any issues. I would recommend you to click 2 or 3 times here, okay, just to generate new MAC addresses. Again, this is not necessary. I'm just being precautious, okay? Now I save, and now I can run my virtual machine, okay? And that's what you need to do in case you are there it is, in case you are a Mac user with a M1 or M2 chip. Now you can see that your CentOS Linux is installed, the network is set to the bridged mode, and that's all that you need. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in our next video or in our face-to-face meeting in a lab. Bye-bye.